Welcome. My name is Mike Scott. It's great to have you here with Farm Table and Louie and Louis from Louie's Finer Meats. They're some of the experts in the area. Tonight we'll be learning sausage making from them. I'm the program director here at Farm Table. Our mission is to build local food culture, as many of you know, and we do that through our local foods restaurant, where we serve food from very local farmers as much as we can. We have a lot of classes and events. And then we also have an art gallery where we feature local artists. So tonight we're really grateful to have Louie and Louis here. So are really experts in this field. Many of you probably have enjoyed their meats. I think it's a 51-year-old shop now, and they're in Cumberland. So I'm sure they will introduce themselves a little bit more as well. So welcome everybody, delighted to have you here. And Louis and Louie, take it away.
Hey, well, good evening, everybody, and happy Fat Tuesday. Thank you for coming aboard with us tonight. And we enjoy doing this sort of a presentation. And I'm Louie Muench Sr., obviously, and my son, Louie Jr. or Louie the Fourth, are here tonight to do what we really like to do, talk about sausage and everything. We like to share our knowledge, and I'll let Louis make a couple comments here too.
Yeah, absolutely. Bear with us here. I'd like to think I'm fairly good at technology, but it's our first time trying to teach a class virtually. So you think we work through all the kinks, but hopefully this goes good. And please go ahead and save any questions. We'll make sure there's time at the end for questions, or type it in the chat box as he's saying, and we will go from there.
I guess we have a PowerPoint presentation talking about the history of the store, a little bit about some of our philosophy and stuff like that, and some basic sausage making, and then we'll actually do a live demonstration like Mike said. But again, I appreciate you having us. We're flattered that we were offered to do this tonight. And I guess that being said, I guess one question is, why are we here? Question is because we enjoy doing it. Number two, we don't want this to become a lost art. So many things got so commercialized. Everybody's got family recipes, and there's another opportunity to be your own boss, your own. You can control what you eat. You can be your own artist. You can make what you want and how you want to make it. And so that's all part of the whole deal. And the question's been asked sometimes, well, why do you want to do that? Because it's competition. No, anything that anybody can learn about sausage is good for our business. Any way we can promote sausage, you get people who like it. You know that it's not all the offbeat stuff that you think people have put in sausage. So that being said, we'll get started on that PowerPoint, and we'll have plenty of time for your sausage make easy. Like this, we've gone to college for this. My son has got a master's degree and I've got a regular degree. And so trying to put it all in 1 hour is a challenge, but we want to introduce you to it. Hopefully that you can understand it a little bit, and it'll get your brainwaves moving. Welcome, sausage lovers. You wouldn't be here if you weren't curious about sausage, or like eating sausage, or want to learn how to make sausage. And so this is a marquee on the front of our store, and that kind of sums it all up. We opened our store in November of 1970, so we picked a good year to celebrate our 50th celebration. It hasn't been a fun year to be in business, but that's our humble beginnings in downtown Cumberland, the current Chamber of Commerce building in 1975. I guess this was, there's a Miss Cumberland award out in the front. Since then, we moved up to our present location in 1978, and then we have added on a half a dozen times, and now this is how our store looks right now, except the sign says good luck hunters, but yesterday it said minus 30 degrees, so it all changes. My grandfather and Louis's great-grandfather was a sausage maker in Germany. That's him and his brother George. That's Louie the First, and they had a sausage shop in Chicago in 1930. And so we come by our roots humbly and honestly. And unfortunately, I never met my grandfather. He was killed in a car accident when my father was 16. But anyway, I've met a lot of the relatives in trips to Germany. 1970, 78, 5 employees. 1975, that's my father. That would be Louie II in our old store in downtown Cumberland. And that's me and, or my dad and my brother behind the meat counter at that point in time in the store in 1970. That's how the building looked like when we bought it in 1978. And we had a lot of work to do. And you don't need to have a big history lesson here, but that's this is one of the additions, and that's what it looked like after the addition. Moving forward, we thought our problems are over because we had kept adding on, and we added on retail and processing. We have a liquor store that's adjacent to the business. That's the liquor store when we bought it, and it's managed by my sister-in-law, Teresa. And we tore that down, put a new one up a couple of years ago. It gave us a bakery and added kitchen facilities, and we remodeled the facade. Here's some pictures of aerial view when we had our Worst Fest a couple of years ago. That's what we were hoping to have this year for our 50th anniversary. But unfortunately, because of the COVID restrictions, we couldn't do it. But we would always get 2,000 or 3,000 people here for it. It was always a great event. Louis, you can chime in here at any point if you want to. Just let me know here.
Yep.
That's the facade we just talked about. To your right, it's a maypole. We did that as kind of to celebrate our German roots, and then plus to put on the maypole some of the things that are near and dear to us. God and country at the top, of course, Boy Scouting and hunting, fishing, skiing, and then some family heritage on it. So if you're ever in Cumberland, stop and take a look at that. There's a closer shot.
And so it's something that's done in Germany and some other European countries, traditionally on May Day, but ours is up here around.
We've really enjoy competing in sausage competitions. We've got nearly 600 awards, state, national, international, and state fair awards for our sausage. And that's just some of the awards that we have. Everything from soup and nuts there. In this particular picture is my youngest son, Eric, my brother, Bill, and then my 2 or 3 of our workers, and then my son, Louis, and myself, of course, the best looking guy of the whole bunch. So
we talk a little bit about the sausage competitions, and we go to every year we usually go to, there's a state one in Madison, and there's a state fair one in with a state fair in Milwaukee, and then a national one which moves to a different place every year. And then every once in a while they only hold it every 3 years, and it's hard to even go that often. But there's an international one in Frankfurt, Germany. But we also serve as product show judges, which has actually helped us learn more when we're judging in Minnesota, South Dakota, other states, Indiana we've gone to.
When I went to the German competition, I was honored to be a judge for one day at an international competition. And it was one of the highlights of my career, being in Germany and being a judge. So celebrate 50 years, heard about that. Another family business, myself, my son Louis, my father, my brother Jim, and my brother Bill. Our business philosophy has been, since a lot of competition out there, we have to decide what we want to do. Customer service, product quality, community service, doing competitions, and everything like that. Right here on this particular day, our broad house was set up as a fundraiser for Project Santa here in Cumberland, if you could read between the lines there a little bit. Common meat industry challenges, it's labor intensive, it's highly regulated, very expensive with utilities, equipment, insurance, highly competitive. Even Menards and gas stations are selling meat and everything right now. And so, and plus all the supermarkets and all the mail order stuff and everything like that. So it's competitive, but it keeps us on our toes. There's changing technology, economic trends. You got to keep on top of consumer trends. That's changing from day to day. Different regulations doesn't make it any easier either. We're affiliated with the American Association of Meat Processors, which I was president in Wisconsin Association of Meat Processors, where my son's on the board of directors right now, and I'm a past director. And we're both master meat crafters, which we wear here, which is a program set up by the state of Wisconsin to enhance your knowledge and everything, and be up to date on, up to speed on many things. The services we have, Louis, you want to talk about those?
Right. So if you got the gist of it is, you can see that we've grown a lot over the years, and we're offering a lot of different things. So you can kind of see the list there of a lot of the different things we offer. And so our focus, though, is certainly on the sausage making, and which is the point of this program. But we have tried to offer a little bit everything. The bakery, for instance, was a nice addition, because we can offer that if somebody's having a graduation party or a wedding or something like that, and they want to get the meat for it and they want to get everything. So we offer that. You know, we are doing some internet sales, and we're doing a lot of wild game processing. And what that does for us is here, we're very busy all summer. But right now, this time of year slows down tremendously retail wise. And by doing the wild game, that allows us to keep doing what we want to do year round by making sausage. So
one of our keys to fame is we have over 100 different varieties of bratwurst on hand at any given time, and we have over 400 inspected meat products, which keeps we're a training ground for the Department of Agriculture. They like to bring inspectors in here because they see a lot of things they don't see in other places. The history of sausage is derived from the Latin word salsus, which means preserved or salted. Sausage was necessary to preserve meat. Before the refrigeration days, that was the only way they could keep stuff alive. Heavily salting it, heavily spicing it, drying it, and that sort of thing.
And I should just note on that, if people say, can I make sausage without any salt at all? Technically not, because the name implies that it's salted. And we can get into that, some of the science of it, but once we get into the presentation.
Everybody's heard some of the names that we're familiar with: meat Frankfurters, Frankfurt, Germany, Wieners, Vienna, Genoa, Italy, Bologna, Braunschweiger, Lebanon bologna. Believe it or not, it's Lebanon, Pennsylvania, not Lebanon in the Mideast. Wisconsin is the top sausage state in the nation. It's because of strong ethnic groups, many numerous markets. It leads the nation consistently in sausage, ham, bacon competitions, and production. By definition, sausage is a mixture of ground meat and fat laced with salt, herbs, and spices. Sausage can be shaped into a patty or stuffed into a casing. It can be fresh, smoked, pre-cooked, cured, smoked, or dried. Fresh is no cures, not smoked or cooked. Examples: bratwurst, Italian sausage, pizza toppings, breakfast links, or patties. And that'll be our emphasis tonight. If you go in down the line, when we have smoked stuff or we have dried sausage, that's another whole class. We're trying to do stuff here that you can do at home, and you can do it tomorrow if you wanted to. Cooked is fully cooked, steamed, pre-cooked bratwurst is an example of that. Smoked, I just mentioned, wieners, smoked Polish sausage, ring bologna, ready to eat, summer sausage, salami, luncheon loaves, snack sticks, liverwurst. That's category. Ethnic, and that's a whole big kettle of fish, because there's thousands and thousands of them. There's the metwurst and the weisswurst and all the capicolas. Every country's got a different version of, a lot of times, the same thing. But a lot of the ethnic ones are the classic sausages, where they're made for preservation purposes.
And if you go to Europe, you'll find that, and even here in the United States to an extent, but everywhere you go, their traditional thing is, it might be different from one town to the next. And so that's what makes it interesting. That's kind of where the sky is the limit. So, and some of that is changing, I think, with cooking shows, the internet, like we make a andouille smoked Cajun sausage. And, you know, in the past, I think most people here wouldn't have heard of that unless they're in Louisiana. And now it's getting more popular nationwide. And that would just be one example of that, where people are looking for different flavors, different combinations, and different recipes. So
Meat selection, that is so key to making successful sausage. Sausage got, like I said at the beginning of the deal, it's got a bad rap because there's an outlet for less or marginal meats and everything like that. But if you want good sausage, you need good meat, and the raw materials supposed to be of high quality and fresh. A good color, fresh is more desirable than frozen. Caution when using venison, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Watch for clots, connective tissue, bone chips, etc. Sausage is known to be overly healthy. We got different healthy versions. You know, chicken, turkey. You can have leaner beef and pork. But sometimes we'll make something for somebody that wants something extra lean, and they said they didn't like it because it was dry. Well, it's just kind of a hard situation because you can't have your cake and eat it too. So we give them options and alternatives and so on and so forth. And like it says here, too lean is rubbery, less tender, less flavor and juiciness. Too fat, poor appearance, greasy flavor, cooking loss, and the texture isn't the greatest. Sausage should have a good aromatic odor to it, be flavorful, and a desirable internal and external appearance. I mean, we could give a whole course just on our judging of sausages, and that's interesting because the judging is based on internal and external appearance, everything from wrinkles, air bubbles to, of course, flavor and everything. So that's helped our trade a little bit by learning how to not only be a good judge, but then you learn to be a good sausage maker too.
Louie and Louis, I've got a question for you. In that last slide, just briefly, 20 to 30% fat, is that the usual goal?
yes, and like we said, there are certain sausages where you might want to make it leaner, or, you know, there's some we see, some that are sold that are probably half fat, and to me that's not desirable, but it just depends on what type of sauce you're making. And
our main goal here is like around 20%.
Okay.
And we don't like to go over that because then it starts getting to be a little bit rich looking. But if you want, you know, something, I guess in the industry, it's closer to 30%. But here we're closer to 20%. And I actually 15 to 20%, I would say. Would you say, Louis?
yeah, and so we do make ours, I would say, leaner than a lot of the stuff on the market, which people do notice. They, you know, say when they cook it that it doesn't all disappear in the pan. And as soon as you see like a cheap pork sausage, it'll be, you know, 40 or 50%, and that's not really desirable because it's really greasy and most of it disappears in the pan when you're cooking it. So that's the different factors you're looking at. You want to have enough fat so it has the flavor and juiciness, but you don't want to have so much that it's just a bunch of grease in the pan either. So.
Gotcha. And we have one other question too. Back a little bit to your family history, which is so interesting. Where in Germany is your family from, and how does that or has that influenced how you make sausage?
Well, most of the family was on the Czech border in Bavaria, and which was really you know, maybe 40, 50 miles north of Munich. So Bavarians were known for a lot of the classic sausages, Nürnbergers and Weisswurst and Bavarian Bierschenkens and and so on and so forth. And they that was where the family was from, and it's always fun to go there. And when I went there a couple of years ago, they went around to all the meat markets and they brought me like 5 or 6 different kinds of Weisswurst for me to try. And they said, This was the most expensive one, but wasn't the best one, is what they told me. So, and it was always fun for me to do that and to look at the different spices and everything. It's like a little kid in a candy store if you go to a Bavarian meat market. Food safety requirements for bacterial growth has gotten really big, and my son is more of a meat scientist than me, and I'll let him talk about that quick here.
So basically, you know, generally speaking, you're trying to avoid bacteria from growing. And so, which we could get into if we got in more depth. There's some cases where you do want bacteria to grow if you're doing using a starter culture, and a lot of our snack sticks and summer sausage, we're adding a good bacteria, which you want to grow and produce lactic acid. But normally, if you think of bacteria, you're thinking of you don't want it to grow. So I mean, I guess to start with is good quality meat to start with, and that's where it gets challenging sometimes with venison if it's warm out, because venison makes great sausage. But you just want to make sure that, you know, you're not taking a deer that's been hanging there at 65 degrees for 4 days, because just like anything, it's going to spoil anything. And that's where it gets to a desirable temperature. You know, generally speaking, we say anything above 40 degrees, the bacteria can be growing and start spoiling. So the bottom line is you want a good quality meat that you're going to use that's not spoiling. And bacteria can grow if there's food for them in there. So that's where, you know, if there's sugar or something, it will actually spoil faster, especially a simple sugar. And then water, they grow. So that's one way of preservation is drying snack sticks, or in the case of jerky or certain sausage products that are dried. That's why it preserves it, is because if it's dry enough, the bacteria can't grow. Same thing with oxygen, and that's why we use vacuum sealing to prevent, I mean, there's aerobic or anaerobic bacteria, but that prevents most of them from growing if there's no oxygen available. And same thing, again, the acidity, the pH, and that's where in certain types of sausages, which we probably won't get too far into tonight, but the same thing is that if you have a lactic acid starter culture where there's a pH that the bacteria just simply can't grow, that's another form of preservation where, so sometimes people wonder if you see something that's shelf stable, doesn't need refrigeration. It's not necessarily that they added a whole bunch of chemicals to it. There's just the natural factors, look at the dryness and the pH that prevent that from growing. And that's why, as we said initially, the sausage was kind of developed in the first place, a form of preservation. So the colder the better, and that's why we say 30 to 40 degrees, what you should be storing your raw meat at.
Meat freezes at 28 degrees.
Right, and so meat has a lower freezing point than water, so it's about 28 degrees where it'll start freezing. And so kind of the colder the better without freezing it if you have fresh meat. And the meat thermometer is great to make sure something is fully cooked, or if it's cool enough. And even at home, for us, we have to keep all these records for inspection. And the big thing too is just keeping everything clean. You don't want to contaminate anything if you have raw meat and you have something else on the same table. And so that's it's important to keep in mind whenever you're doing this. Basically, if you see the recommendation, never defrost at room temperature. Well, I know sometimes you have to, because it's never going to thaw out in the refrigerator. But the big thing is keep an eye on it so it doesn't get too warm, because it starts getting warm. If you have meat that's at 70 degrees, it's just going to spoil right away. So it's the big thing is try to keep it cold.
Personal safety, being in this business here, I suppose there's always nicks and cuts and so on and so forth, but a big issue is make sure that your knives are sharp and be careful. Some kid yesterday cut himself quite badly by washing knives. He had it in the sink, and he wasn't on top of his game there. You know, that's just basic dishwashing. But as you know, and I know, that's the way it happens. Some of the equipment, the grind, the gears, and everything, things can happen fast. But the main thing a lot of times is slipping and falling and everything. So we, like any of our power equipment, the guys have to be able to see where the cord is. So you make sure it's unplugged before you start cleaning it.
And just a reason to bring up the safety, even for home sausage making, is somebody had a story that his son just recently this year stuck his hand in the grinder. They're making sausage at home, having a good time, and his 8-year-old son lost his hand. So it's just something to be alert, especially if you're not familiar with the equipment.
And everybody wants to help, and sometimes there's too much help too, you know. So basic equipment, if you're going to get into it real seriously, you can go from every level, from having hardly any equipment to just having some fundamental equipment to having big equipment. And here behind us in the background, you'll see
When we get in the presentation, we'll go through some of the equipment we have
but
there.
I have a $50,000 stuffer from Germany there. And here I got some smaller equipment and big mixers and tumblers. But you can go, you don't need anything if you can just buy meat pre-ground and so on and so forth. But a scale, containers, some cutlery, and if you want to go to the next level, there's grinders, knives and plates with different sizes of the grind, a mixer, a stuffer and horns, and then any packaging, paper, marking tape, things like that. Particle definition is important. It's not a food safety issue, it's a quality issue. To make the sausage not only look nice, but if it's smearing, or you stuffed it too warm or ground it got too warm and it got smeary, it's not a food safety issue, but the texture isn't right, and maybe it'll fat out sooner. So there again, it's having the equipment clean and cold. Two usual grinding methods, coarse ground or fine ground. That's the basic ones, unless you really get fancy and you're going into different particles with matrices and stuff really fine. But mainly coarse ground is more like for Polish sausage, Italian sausage, that sort of product. The finer stuff is, you know, pork sausage, bratwurst, and so on. Mixing distributes the seasoning. Over mixing is if you mix it to death, and the stuff will actually get rubbery, and it's hard to believe that sausage can get tough, but it can get tough by over mixing it, where the protein is extracted so much to the point where the meat's just binds together really, really tight. And under mixing, it just kind of gets sloppy, and you're not getting the spices integrated properly into the product.
And I'll just interject there that when we're talking about extracting the protein, that's kind of scientific reason why you need to have some salt added. It's not just for flavor. When you mix the salt with the protein, that's when it gets sticky. So you notice it goes from hamburger, once you mix it more, it starts to stick together. And so that's where he's going with, if you overmix it, it could get too sticky or it's binding together too much. So sometimes there's a fine line, especially.
And maybe it's too much science here, but it's just a matter so that you know briefly, you've heard about it, and you can touch on it later on. But casings, the three main types that we use are pork casings. We use that for bratwurst, Polish sausage, Italian sausage. And in our store here, we use the natural pork casings. Sheep casings we use for skin on wieners, pork sausage links, snack sticks, and then beef casings are not, the pork and sheep are edible. Beef is not because there's anything wrong with it, but it's not very desirable. But we use that for ring bologna, ring liver, that sort of product, because it's larger in diameter. and it's got a nice curl to it. So it adheres itself nicely to products like ring bologna and ring liver. Proper preparation is if when you get the natural casings, is to if a lot of times they're salted, you just rinse them off really good, soak them for a day or two, and then just before you use them, just rinse them one last time, and then take them and use them for you can just put them in water and just use them as you normally would. And when you're all done, if there's any left over, you salt them back down and use them at another time.
A couple of questions have come in, guys. One, will the slides tonight be available after the event?
Yeah, we can email this presentation to you if you connect with us afterwards.
Okay, great. Yeah, you could send it to me and I could send it out to folks if that works for you.
It'll only be $99.95 each.
Yeah. And I'm also the video recording of the class, so you'll be able to see the slides on the video recording if you want. And then as home sausage makers, what are the risks of over or under mixing when doing it by hand?
Well, you know, when we had that old store down there, I mixed everything by hand. Everything from summer sausage to all the bratwurst and everything like that. And when my dad finally bought a commercial mixer, I was the happiest man of the year because my poor arm was kaput. But so I mixed everything, and so there's really no risk involved. It's just quality risk. In fact, any demonstrations we do tonight will just be by hand because that's why almost people would do it. And a lot of times on like Sunday, for example, if we don't want to get equipment dirty, if we don't have production going on and we need a batch of pork sausage or whatever, I will just go back and mix by hand. I did this past Sunday.
And I would think that, you know, your risk by doing it by hand is more of under mixing it versus over mixing it. I mean, I think that's one of those things where there's some trial and error involved to get it mixed enough that the ingredients are sufficiently mixed throughout the batch, and also that it's sticky enough. You're probably not going to over mix it by hand, but I think it's just something you have to learn by trial and error. And we'll go into that when we do a demonstration here a little bit.
Great. And a couple of people have questions about casings. Do you sell casings in Cumberland? And can we buy ready-to-use casings?
We sell casings that are pre-packed on our shelf. Right now, we've got like, this is a hog casing for bratwurst, sheep casing for the breakfast lengths. And then we sell, and I'll go into this on the next slide here, the collagen casings. And then we also sell in bulk in the back. If you got a big crew together and you want to make a whole bunch, well, then we can sell, you know, casings in the bulk.
So yeah, we do get a variety of both natural and collagen casings.
And we sell casings every day. I mean, every day. It's a big item. There's not many places you can get it anymore. Plus, you got knowledgeable people here that can tell you what you need and how much you need and so on and so forth. So that helps out a lot. Any other questions about that?
Not at this time, so thanks. That's great.
Sure. And then we go briefly into the collagen casings. And, you know, years ago, we would never even touch them because they weren't very good. Now they are good. We use collagen casings on our smoked bratwurst or snack sticks. And the snack sticks come in two colors, just mahogany like this. So they're already pre-colored and everything. Or we've got a clear, and you can buy these in any diameter you want. This particular diameter that he's got here is a 21 millimeter. And those casings, you slide the whole thing right in the horn.
Stuff it dry.
Stuff it dry. You don't have to prep the casings or anything like that. And they work really good. The collagen casings for like bratwurst would look like this. And you just stuff those dry as well. And like a tube like this, believe it or not, will stuff almost 20 pounds of meat. So it goes a long ways. The downside of these things are it's not authentic as far as appearance, but they are uniform. So if I need to have in the commercial business, I have to have 5 to the pound bratwurst, then I can have 5 to the pound bratwurst because they're all the same. Natural casings will fluctuate in diameter as you make them. And the other thing is bad part about these is they don't link quite as well as a natural casing would. So all of our fresh bratwurst is natural casings. All of our smoked bratwurst, because we package them, we use the collagen ones. So is there any questions about that?
Should note that a collagen casing is a natural, it is an animal protein, and actually, I mean, the natural casings basically are made of collagen, but these are manufactured to be uniform out of usually a beef protein.
So they're edible.
And there's, and you could just touch on, there is some non-edible casings like a cellulose, which is basically wood, you know, like you'd use on a summer sausage.
And peel it.
So you have to peel it off. It's not edible at all, or even plastic on certain things like a Braunschweiger where you want to cook it in hot water. And you don't want, you're not going to be doing a smoke. So there's all kinds of casings out there depending on what you're making.
And now they make them in all colors and we get them pre-printed and everything. So it's kind of a science in itself. Stuffing, the batter should be well packed and kept cold. Equipment should be well maintained, clean and cold. Correct horn size for the casing. And if you can just straight stuff it, or you can rope it, or you can stuff it right into plastic bags for like a bulk sausage or something like that for that you make patties on or meatloaf or something like that later on.
Okay, so and we already kind of touched on some of this as far as the salt being important, and it's one thing where there's a lot of demand to make stuff with less sodium, and you know they say that the sausage recipes, if you followed some of the recipes from 100 years ago, it probably tastes so salty that you couldn't eat it, because before refrigeration they would really add a lot of salt to as a preservative,
Up to 3 or 4%.
and so now we're generally using a lot less than that. It seems to be going lower all the time, but there's kind of a limit to how low you can go on the sodium and still have it turn out because of the binding properties of it. So it's not just for flavor, and it's not so much for preservation anymore because we have refrigeration, but a lot of it is for the binding and the flavor. So a lot of times it might be 1 to 2%, and it was probably double that in a lot of the older recipes. And the same thing in the water. A lot of water can be added to aid in mixing. There's regulations on us. You know, at home you can do whatever you want. The reason why the amount of water you add is regulated is because it's a way that some places might use to cheat the customer if you're selling water. So for example, is in fresh sausage, there's a limit of 3% water, which is basically enough to mix the spices through, but it's not really adding much weight to it. And so it depends on the product. There's certain regulations. We have noticed in Europe that they use more water than we do here. Meat's expensive, and it's a way to extend it. But the water should be cold and pure, and watch out for if it's chlorinated, that might affect the flavor, for instance, especially if you know what you're using. So,
Louie and Louis, we've got another question. Should salt be added to a venison burger grind that is just venison and beef fat?
so if you're just making a burger,
It says venison burger grind.
yeah. Well, it depends. You know, if you're just going to use it in recipes, you're probably going to add some salt at some point. If you're like, if we're just making ground venison, we don't add any salt to it. If we're just making ground beef, you know, that's just pure ground that.
No water, no salt, no
water,
nothing.
and you go home and use it the way you want. If you're making into a sausage, then you're probably going to want to have some salt to help hold it together, because you're making into a sausage.
If I was just making a hamburger, I certainly wouldn't add any to it because salt and freezer aren't exactly the best combination after a long period of time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sugar not only does it does a couple things that increases the browning while cooking. Believe it or not, it does make a difference. You know, if you add dextrose or regular table sugar or brown sugar, it adds you know, to the color when you're browning it. So you know, that's one little thing. If you like, some people don't like too much salt, but like we've been talking about salt here for a little while. It cuts the harshness of the salt a little bit. It doesn't do anything to reduce the sodium level, but it cuts the harshness of it. But then a lot of things, the reason we use it here is for flavor. You know, we use maple syrup, we use honey, brown sugar, you know, molasses in some products and so on and so forth. So you kill two birds with one stone. You get the flavor from it, and plus you got the attributes of the sugar. And spices, I have a room that's called my den. I've got almost any spice you can think of. I have, not only because it's not mainstream, but we get a lot of requests from people that want something with ghost pepper, or they want no nutmeg, or they want double the amount of allspice. I mean, all kinds of oddball things. So we've got a lot of different spices, and I enjoy that room. It's my cave, and we put the inspector in there too. So because it gets too spicy for him, then he has to vacate. But anyway, we have most of our spices are pre-blend. But I mean, I give my recipe to a spice company, like for example, pepperoni, and then they will send it back. And then that way I can have it set up for people to make, and it's always consistent, and so on and so forth. And then I've got a lot of recipes that, since we make so many different things, like I said, we make them from scratch. And plus it gives you the variability of making your own unique sausage. And so, you know, spices are gotta be fresh, gotta be turned over. We have to actually, you know, naturally date the spices when they come in, so we make sure that they're fresh and current and so on and so forth. So if you don't do that, it's not gonna be consistent. And buy the spices from a reputable place, a nice food co-op or something like that. A lot of times spices are expensive, but I found that they're normally really fresh, and it's worth the extra buck that you're gonna spend to make your spices good.
And that's where you can really experiment. If, let's say you buy a package that says to make Italian sausage, and you say, well, I want to have more garlic and I want it to be hotter. Well, you can add a tablespoon of garlic and powder, and you can add a couple tablespoons of red pepper if you want, or the sky's the limit. So that's where you can kind of make it in your own recipe if you're starting with a blend that you bought.
Extenders, binders, they serve two purposes. This inspection used to get something like bologna and check for water, check for cereal, check for stuff like that. Now they're more concerned about food safety, the E. coli, Listeria, and so on and so forth. Their mindset is good because we feel that the customer will be your best inspector on that sort of thing. And the state's the best inspector as far as food safety issues go. And so some of the binders or extenders are necessary for, like, if I make say, for example, a pre-cooked brat and I put a lot of cheese in it, or I put sauerkraut in it, or something like that. If I would just make it, it would fall apart. So I would add like some cornstarch or corn syrup to hold it together, to help bind it together, to make it more desirable, to make it a better product. As far as extending goes, we rarely, if any, use that anymore. and we probably should, but we think that the quality is regressed if you add too much cereal and so on and so forth. And plus, in this day and age with all the allergens, it makes it hard because we'll talk about allergens a little bit later here, but milk, non-fat dry milk, gluten from the wheat flour, so on, corn syrup solids, that's got a bad name. So we like to keep our label clean, but we do need to use some of this stuff to help bind different products together at a certain time. There again, sodium nitrate, it's gotten a bad name. It's not allowed in fresh sausage. It's used in cured meat for smoking and food safety, smoke products. Antioxidants, BHA, BHC used to inhibit rancidity. Those type of products you'll see mostly in big commercial operations where it's going to be out for a long time and so on and so forth. We don't use that sort of product here.
Excuse me again, we've got a question about binders as well. Any advice for adding things like wild rice or a potato sausage to help bind?
Well, yeah, I think we'll get into that a little bit here next. But absolutely, that wild rice, that's one of the properties of that is that it holds a lot of water in the rice when you cook it. And so that helps hold the whole thing together, and it's holding a lot of moisture in there.
And then there's not many products, but like Swedish potato sausage that have potatoes in it. Wild rice is a great product for certain things. So you're absolutely right. That's good. Phosphates, you're seeing out more and more. What it does is it's a water holding deal. It's not legal in most products, not fresh sausage, anything that we're going to be making today. We're just putting it out here on the board so you know what's out there, and maybe there's reasons for it. Antimicrobials, some smoked or ready-to-eat products, if they're not fermented, there's a requirement by the state to inhibit listeria or like sodium lactate. And some of them are pretty, as far as antimicrobials go, they're not poison. They're, pretty good food-based deal. There again, fresh sausages, it's not a factor. Flavor enhancers, there's MSG, and what else is there? Which we don't use in any of our products or any of our fresh sausages. Condiments growing in popularity. Examples: cheese, jalapenos, wild rice, cranberries, mushrooms. Hand me that one way back. Now there's even places with different flavored maple syrup. This one is cinnamon. I've seen jalapeno and everything like that's kind of interesting. Honey, we add maple syrup, and of course the sauerkraut. And then of all the different types of cheeses, there's jalapenos. Yeah, there you go.
So these are some green jalapenos here.
And then we have all the different cheeses. There's right now it's available. We have there's wild rice.
Yeah, so wild rice, we do use a lot of wild rice on certain products.
Then all the different cheeses: habanero, Gouda, blue, feta, Romano, Parmesan, mozzarella, Swiss, cheddar, and all the different products that we make.
You'll see on the cheese, there's regular cheese like you're used to, and there's high temp cheeses. And so we can touch on that a little bit. And we use both in sausage. The high temp cheese comes cubed up like this here, and is available in different kinds. With it, it has a higher melting point so that it holds together in the sausage. So after you cook, and that's why like in a summer sausage, we want to make sure you can see the cheese in there when you slice it. If you use regular cheese, it's all going to melt out, and you might not even know that the cheese is in there anymore because it's all blended in. So it has that benefit of that melting point, and it's used a lot in sausage. But we think that regular cheese has a little bit better flavor, and it has that kind of that runny, gooey texture. So that's kind of the trade-off. So we actually use a lot of our brats. We'll put in some of both, of regular cheese and high temp cheese, so we kind of get the best of both worlds. But there's a lot you can experiment with on that.
We make a lot of different beer brats, like for different breweries and so on. And there, instead of adding water, we add beer to the product. And sometimes it's even beer specific to the type of beer that we add. And then we're exploring more and more different types of wine as well. And that's gotten to be another flavor, a whole different flavor profile. There's whiskey and there's vodka and there's, you know, all the different, and if you're an alcohol freak, it gives flavor, but there's no alcohol because it's cooked off when you cook it.
And I think what we'll get into here is that you can start with a real basic recipe, and if you can kind of make it into whatever you want by adding all these various non-meat ingredients. So you can start with the same batch and maybe say, I'm gonna mix jalapenos with some, and I'm gonna mix some cranberries with some. And so that's where I had a fun presentation with some elementary school kids where I brought a bunch of these different things. I brought some cheese, I brought some mushrooms, jalapenos, cranberries. I didn't bring beer into the school, but maple syrup. And then I let the kids pick out, hey, what do you want to make? And they just had a blast with that. Some of them wanted the sweet, some of them wanted to try the jalapeno, some of them want, and that's where you can kind of make it into your own blend, and the sky's kind of the limit on that. So
we went to a sausage competition at Purdue University one time, and they had a whole table full of different condiments, and they gave all these sausage makers 5 pounds of meat and have at it whatever you wanted, and that was kind of a fun competition because it really was interesting. Anyway, if my wife, I'll say, what do you want? She says bratwurst, and I'll say, what kind? She says, just regular brats. So I guess there's something to be said about that too. Nothing wrong, just the regular, good old fashioned products, and you can do whatever you want to. But we're just showing you that you be an artist in your own way, and you can do as little or as much as you want to. And normally this would be more of an advanced thing, talking about all the different condiments, but why not throw it out there? Because as you can tell, we're talking faster and louder because we enjoy doing it. So
I just wanted to interject and really appreciate your enthusiasm and of course knowledge, Louie and Louis. And one of the things I think is, you know, at Farm Table we talk about the terroir, the taste of a place, and that
Yep.
it seems like sausage, particularly I suppose if you're getting, you know, your meat from a local producer like we do at our restaurant, or a deer that you've harvested, that you shot, you know, you really have an opportunity to introduce other local ingredients that would contribute to a taste that might well be unlike a sausage from California or something. So that I'll write in the definition of terroir in a minute here, but I just wanted to comment on that and thank you guys.
And that's where a lot of these things were, for example, when we came up with what we call the Wisconsin summer sausage or Wisconsin bratwurst, which is one of the first specialty ones we made. And we said, well, we want this to have items from Wisconsin in it. So it has Wisconsin local maple syrup, and it has local honey, and it has cranberries, which Wisconsin's the largest cranberry producing state. And there's cheddar cheese, which of course is a Wisconsin thing. So I'm glad you brought that up. You know, we use real maple syrup or things, and some of these spice companies say, well, you can buy this fake maple powder, but it's not the same as adding the real thing. It's definitely more expensive to use the real thing, but that's kind of the way that we want to do it and try to be as authentic as possible on that.
So now what we're going to do is to actually show some of the sausage operation here a little bit, and we spent more time than I thought, which is fine, and that's what it's here for. But we'll before we start, I'd like to just show you some of the different bratwursts that we were just talking about before. And Louis, you can hand me those. Like I said, we had 100 different kinds of bratwurst. This particular one is Hungarian style bratwurst, and it's red because Hungarian is one of the sausages that are allowed by the state to put extra paprika in, so the garlic and onion and stuff in that. Here's another bratwurst. I just grabbed some, a half dozen off the shelf. This one was bratwurst with whiskey and cracked black pepper, and that's one. And here's another one I just grabbed called Reuben flavored bratwurst, which would have corned beef and in it, and so that might be appropriate for St. Patrick's Day. Turkey style bratwurst. We picked this one. Will be featuring next week in honor of the Birkebeiner, which is going on, and it's got cranberries and blueberries and cheddar cheese and honey and mozzarella cheese, and we also make a snack stick like that as well. And another one is bacon cheeseburger. Well, it explains itself what's in it. There's beef and pork and bacon and high temp cheddar cheese in it. Another one we have here is Hawaiian bratwurst. That would have like some pineapple and coconut in it. And we're not going to go do all 100 here, just a couple more. Beer and cheddar flavored bratwurst, which has got to be one of the more common ones that we make here now. And then lastly, we talk about liquor and stuff. This is a martini flavored bratwurst. And so there's vodka and olives and all kind of fun stuff like that in it. So something for everybody, and we'll go from there. Tonight we're just going to do three types of product here. Here I have some ground pork. You just buy it from the supermarket. If you don't have a grinder or anything like that, just say you want it ground. We ground the spine. And so this particular product we're going to use for pork sausage. And so you can make links out of it, or you can make patties out of it, or you just and that's all it's to it. So it's very rudimentary, very fine. You do it with venison. You do half venison, half pork. Or you do all pork, whatever you want. And so what we're going to do here is take this product, hold it, see this okay? And I got a small little pan here. And like I said, we're going to mix this by hand. And what we'll do with this guy here, okay, here I have it in the pan. I'll lay it out here fairly, so it's nice and level like that. This is just 5 pounds. And then the spice, I will sprinkle over the top of it. Now, we have spice kits here, or there's recipes online. And the pork sausage spice primarily is salt, pepper, nutmeg, sage. That's a pretty basic product, and it's very, very good product. Then at that point, like we were talking about, the legal limits is 3 pounds per 100 pounds. But if at home you do whatever you want to do, and so this would be more than the legal limit, but it'll facilitate the mixing. This is just an 8-ounce cup, and it's about half full. So it's like 4 ounces of water. I'm pouring it on top of the product. And so what I do is in the old days, I mix, like I said, everything by hand, even 50-pound batches. But first thing I do is I put the product in there and I poke it in with my hands like this. You see what I did there? And then you can
Your whole substick will
yeah,
see
you
it
take a
over
look
there.
at it. I poke it all into it like that. And then I slide it down to the end and I knead it. I push it forward like this. I knead the product and squeeze my hands and push it at the same time. This drives that salt and spices into the product. And then And then I'll flip the whole pan around. And, you know, I've seen, you know, people at home, they put it on the table and everything like that. Everything, any way you think you can do it the best way. This is just the way that we've always did it here when we're making stuff by hand. And so at the very end, I flip it over to get it in, and I flip the pan around and do it again. And after like 2 or 3 minutes of this, now I can see right now it's already starting to get a little sticky. I'm eyeballing it. It's starting to get a little bit shiny. I know that it's starting to get mixed into the product quite well. And so now this particular product is just a bulk pork sausage. There's nothing more that I would do with that. And you see that it's
you see, I can hold this, now it's got some of the protein out where it's sticking together.
and so now you might say, well, he didn't mix it very long. There wasn't very much spice. There wasn't very much meat. And I like the way that this looks in appearance. I like the way that it's sticking together and just visually, the product is the spice is put through the product very nicely. So now, right now, this will be ready to make into breakfast legs or be ready to make into patties and at this point, you can take it, package it and freeze it, and you're ready to go. So that's why I'm saying anybody can be a home sausage maker. You can see this in less than 3 minutes. You can be your own home sausage maker. You can buy the ground pork, you can find some spice, and you can mix it. And then if you want to tailor it with some of the other goodies, so be it. I mean, like we make a breakfast patty where we put in, you know, scrambled eggs and bacon and so on and so forth. But I'd rather just buy this and go from there. Now the next one will be basically the same meat.
Excuse me, Louie.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Louie. You say that the recipe is on your website?
The recipe for that, I can make sure it is posted so that you have it, you know.
I guess when you said about recipes online, is the point is that of course we'd like to have you come by our blend, but you can find recipes all over the place online if you're looking for somewhere to start.
And we're more than happy to help.
Okay.
We're not trying to, we want everybody to be happy and have a successful deal. The next.
Great, thank you.
I should note on the mixing, or you can see we really didn't mix it that much. We had enough to get the ingredients and get somewhat sticky. And you might find as you experiment with certain products that needs more mixing, more binding than a fresh sausage. If you're smoking it, it gets a little trickier on making sure it's bound together enough so it holds together when you're smoking it. So just that question comes up. That there's certainly some variation in that, but for a fresh sausage, you really don't need to mix it that much to get what you're looking for.
And at this point, we can't keep your hands what you're doing if you want to adjust the angle of the computer so we can see what you're doing again.
Yep, for sure. The next product we're going to be doing is just bratwurst, and the bratwurst is like the same type of meat, about the same meat as a pork sausage is, except with the bratwurst. I said the pork sausage was nutmeg and sage. Bratwurst is zipped up a little bit more with nutmeg and sage, of course. Nutmeg is such a big bratwurst spice, but there's also some, not a lot, so it's overpowering, but there's onion and garlic and celery and ginger and some spices like that to give it, you know, a unique profile and a unique flavor. And more, so it's a little spicier than what a breakfast would be, but you wouldn't call it hot or you wouldn't call it garlicky or anything like that, except of course, when you have 100 different kinds, and of course, then there's all kinds of spin-offs. I was just talking about basic fundamental bratwurst. Here I'm gonna mix it the same way as I did before, and put the spices on it. It seems like a lot of spice for 5 pounds of product, but like I said, there's a lot of different spices in there. And then same thing with the water.
Is beef or pork?
This is pork.
This is all pork. Yep, it's fine, not super fine, but medium grind pork. And there again, you can do turkey or chicken or beef if you want, but this particular one
And
is,
of course, venison.
and of course, venison, or a combination thereof. So there I put the water in it, and like I did before, I poke it all into the product. And so it's all in there. And then we start the mixing thing, kneading with your hands where you knead it through. And everybody can mix any way they want. It's like I said, is the way we've chose to do it. And then and it's not only mixing spice, it's mixing, you know, the meat too, because sometimes when they grind it, there'll be fat stuff, lean stuff, at different portions of the. And I'm pushing and squeezing at the same time. And then I'll do it one more time. It's starting to get there. I can tell just by the way it feels. It's starting to get sticky. And it's not absolutely necessary to have the gloves for a food safety issue, because it sometimes you feel the texture and stuff better with a bare hand, but you know, especially at home and that sort of thing. Now, those you hold this up here again. Here we've got that stuff where it's not falling apart, and it's and you see I didn't over mix it, but I think I mixed it to the point where it's ready to roll. And then before I start stuffing, I'm going to do the Italian one next, so I don't have to do all the mixing at a different time. So we'll probably have to put this in there. I'll need a little pan for it. And the last one I'm going to mix tonight is a Italian sausage. And here, Italian is a little coarser. Here again is all pork. You can do whatever combination you want. There's a little porker, a little coarser, and maybe a touch leaner, but we'll. And Italian is a wonderful product because you can use it as a ground product for patties. You can use it for lasagna or pizza sausage or spaghetti, or you can stuff it and make it into a regular product, a regular sausage. It's the same with bratwurst, so you can make bratwurst patties as well. So what I'm saying is you can be a sausage maker. You can be a sausage maker without having a stuffer and grinder and all the fine other stuff. Here you see the Italian sausage spice. Where do I have to go for that? Yeah. You can see that I got some red pepper, a little fennel seed, and Um, so you can tell it's a different spice profile than the bratwurst.
And, you know, something like that, you can decide real quick how you want to make it by how much of that red pepper you're adding. So if you don't want it really mild, you can leave that out. If you want it spicier, you can add a bunch. So that's
And Italian sausage, our Italian sausage is salt, pepper, and in this particular batch, we have some fennel seed and garlic, but you can find Italian sausage with, you know, thyme and oregano and basil and, you know, all that kind of fun stuff too. And that makes a really good Italian sausage as well. There again, you can be your own artist. Here, we'll mix this one up real quick. And doing it that old way. And you take a patty of this, and then at home you put some mozzarella cheese, and a piece of pepperoni on it. You've got a really nice little sandwich there. There's no doubt about that.
okay. We're gonna so you can see in our background there, this big machine back there is the big commercial sausage stuffer we have, and that draws a vacuum on us, you know, of air bubbles in the product, and it has a computer on it, so each bratwurst is close to the same size. But we're going to demonstrate on the home style equipment here. So we have this small hand crank stuffer here, and like as my dad pointed out, that's what we started out with here. So
so the first thing we'll be having is a bratwurst in there. There again, you make bratwurst patties out of it. This is a 15-pound sausage stuffer, and it'll only take a few minutes to stuff that out, but we'll stuff that out for you and show you how that works here. How you patch it in there,
so he's right now he's cranking that down to get down to, because I had dumped that meat mixture in there. So now he's getting all the air out of it, because you don't want a whole bunch of air bubbles in your product. So that it comes to when you want to stuff it tight. So he started stuffing it, so a little bit came out. So you can see that now, even without him cranking, it's coming out a little bit. So it shows the air's out of there. It's coming through. So he's getting out. These are some natural hog casings. And you'll find you need to have the right size horn for the type of casings you're using. Some people struggle if they want to use, they're making snack sticks or something with a smaller diameter casing that won't fit on this. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at the equipment.
So slide the casing onto the product. Go ahead.
Louis, did you call that a horn?
Can you say that again?
Did you call that a horn?
Horn, yes. That's what.
Okay.
So these are called a stuffing horn, and here's a couple. So you can see these are two bigger diameter ones. So you have to have the right size horn to match the size of the casings you're using. So something this large of a diameter might be more for like a summer sausage or something like that. So they come in different sizes, and it needs to be, you know, a little bit smaller than the casing we're using. If the casing is too tight on there, the casing is going to break.
Thank you.
So here we go. If you see, there's no use being too speedy about it. but these are bratwursts. So I don't want to stuff it really tight. I want to be able to link the product. Stuff out of the way there's something.
So if you were making like an Italian sauce where you didn't want to link it, you could just roll it up and leave in a big long rope. But since these are bratwursts, we want to have it in a link. So you can link it by hand by pinching it, and then just simply twisting it here. And so in the business, we would use a machine that links it. But yeah, at home, it's not too hard to make this into a bratwurst here. So it's a matter of twisting it. So now you see that those ones I twisted, they have links of bratwurst here. And you could make those whatever size you want. If you want bigger ones, or based on the way we usually make ours, they're about a quarter pound each. But again, that's personal preference.
I had to make a ring bologna one time this big because somebody was going to roast somebody. They wanted to put it over their head when they were featuring them someplace. So you can make it whatever size you want. We also made, how long was the brat we made for the Dallas? We made a 100-foot brat.
Yeah.
150-foot brat.
So it was basically stuffed out 150 feet long. Without linking it at all, because that's what they wanted. They had a grill that was 150 feet long. And the challenge was finding casings that were long enough to do it. So we actually spliced some natural casings together to get the length we wanted. But you can see there, you can show you these are with the natural casings, and they link those into bratwurst there. So then when you cook them, you can just cut them right apart where they're linked, and they'll hold nice. And so the key is you don't stuff that too tight or too loose, because if it's too tight, you might break the casing and you won't be able to link it. If it's too loose, there could be a lot of air pockets in there, and it's not going to hold together. So again, you'll find at home there's some trial and error in that, and that's okay. I mean, we all make mistakes. I mean, the joke is that the reason why sausage makers are overweight is because we have to eat our mistakes. So that's part of the deal. But
and then here we have the Italian sausage. There again, you make the patties or just have the ground. We'll stuff this whole works out. Put it into the stuffer. And then there again, like we showed before, we pack it in here really good. Keep the air pockets out. Get rid of a little bit of bratwurst that was in there. Nice red pepper. So I will put on casing. Looks like I'm doing don't push fatty.
so you talk about.
We got another question.
Yep, go ahead.
Do you need to prick the casings at all to get air pockets out?
Yeah, you can do that. I don't like to have a whole lot of holes in the casing, but you see, like I see where there's a little bit of air pockets in these. You could take a knife and just put some small holes in that to help get the air pockets out. So like I see one here, and Perry's showing a couple small holes will take the air right out. So yeah, that's a good question. There's you don't want to prick it all the way, but just a couple little nicks will get the air out.
Terry mentioned hands of a pro.
The lack of air means that we stuffed it tight, or packed it good too, you know.
Right.
Get this thing out of the way there. Now I'm stuffing this a little tighter because we're making this Italian rope style. If I wanted to link it, I would stuff it a little bit looser. It's just one of those things you have to have the hands on to. Now, I'm really proud of the way it looks. I'm mean, show them the sausage there, cut it off there.
So you can see this Italian sausage, there's they stuffed out there, it looks really nice. There's not a lot of air pockets. And again, it'll take some trial and error. And admittedly, we cheat with a vacuum stuffer you see in the background. But even so, you still get some. It takes a lot of skill to figure out how tight to stuff it. And so you see he's getting some air coming in there, but he's stuffing it tight enough where it's not all going into the product.
Question about how you control how tight it is. Is that something you're doing with your hand, Louie? Control how much meat is going in at what rate?
It's like you can. It's not if you're stuffing it by hand with a crank in your hand. You mostly hold it back with your hand, and so a lot of times, like I said, I don't really like to use gloves because I need a better feel of it if I'm going to be doing it at home. But it's a combination of pressure here. That's what I don't like about, you see people that want to have the sausage stuffed through a grinder or something like that. You got no control on this end. And if you want to make it a quality product like we have here, you need to be able to control it not only with your hand, but on this end as well.
So you can kind of control how fast you're letting the casing go off with the thumb here on the horn. So if you're holding all the casing tight, then it's probably going to pop.
And you're not letting air into it, and you're kind of holding the casing on there to keep air from going in, plus you're controlling how fast it goes in. There's a fine line because you don't want the casing to start bursting, which isn't good for your blood pressure. I guess what we'd like to really do now is I'll just say there's a lot of books available on, and this is my favorite one, Idiot's Guide. No, I'm just kidding. But there's a lot of books out here available. But your main source is if you can find guys like us, because you can go to Farm and Fleet and you can go to Cabela's and you can buy spices. But a lot of times you need the professional answers to questions. And so we like doing it, and we're always available, and we want you to be successful. That's what we want. But I guess that being said, since we're moving along here faster than I thought, or time went by in a hurry, is there any questions? Because we'll stay here as long as we have to, and we sure would enjoy that. So.
Yeah, wonderful. We got one question. I know it might be hard to pick one, but what are some of your favorite broths that you sell? Are there a couple styles you're really proud of that we should try?
Yeah, so basically, what's some of our favorite broths that we're proud of, or ones that suggest
the biggest seller brats, there's something, like I said, for everybody. The biggest seller though is like the Packer bratwurst with sauerkraut and cheddar cheese. That's always been, it's been there for a long time. We got the governor's trophy for it as the outstanding product in the state, and it's always been a good one. Another real popular one, people like stuff zipped up a little bit. It's not stupid hot, but like a jalapeno and cheddar brat, that's a good seller. I guess, it's hard for me to pinpoint what my favorite one is. That's a tough question, because I kind of like all of them. On a certain day, you might like something different, Lois?
And
like?
just Yeah, there's some people really like the sweeter ones, and that's why we have some with the cranberries, like the Wisconsin with the cherry cheese and cranberries, and has some maple syrup in there. And that's what makes it interesting is there is something for everybody. I mean, if because there's some people who just can't tolerate any heat at all, and that's okay. And there's some people that no matter how hot you make it, they might say it's not hot enough. So I like that one. I just had this week again. I said, oh, this might be my new favorite. It's just the mushroom and Swiss bratwurst. It's kind of middle of the road as far as spice, but it has a good flavor and the cheese in there. So
One thing that's came up in the industry a little bit more so in the last couple of years is all the different allergens. And so there's a lot of people are conscientious about that. In fact, some people on their venison are concerned about what allergens, so on and so forth. And so we certainly can work with anybody on anything you want or don't want or can't have. But I guess the beauty about the fresh bratwurst is that there's ours is there's no MSG, there's no gluten unless there's beer in it, and I don't have any control over that. And then there's no preservatives. And so I'll be amused if I look at a commercial brand and it's sitting out in a case and it's got 6 weeks on it. They must really have a lot of dynamite in it to keep it alive that long, because I can't guarantee ours more than 4 or 5, 6 days.
that being said, is on a fresh product, you have to take care of it, and if you're not going to use it, right away to freeze it properly and package it, and that's okay. We just have to use it properly. But I saw there's some other questions that came in, I think.
Yeah. Do you only soak the natural casings, or do you also soak collagen casings?
You soak the natural casings in water, and generally speaking, collagen casings are stuffed dry. We didn't demonstrate that tonight. I mean, I showed you them here with these collagen casings. You would put that right on the stuffing horn the way it is and stuff it dry. And it says, like right on the label on this one, which this was packaged for us, as do not soak in water. And so so yeah, that's a good question. The natural casings need to be soaked in water to loosen them up.
And actually, before we stuff it, I like to have it in kind of water that's not lukewarm, but not ice cold either. It makes it more pliable.
And we've got a couple of questions about smoking techniques. In technique,
Okay, you cut out a little bit there. I mean, is there a...
Oh, sorry. Maybe you want to look in the chat box. Maybe I'm breaking up, but
Because I saw that one
for your smoke.
Okay. Oh, any difference in stuffing techniques if you smoke the sausages? Not really. I mean, you could take that the same way, and then you would hang it on a something to smoke it on. If you're laying it on a rack, or we have these metal rods that we hang the sausage on. It just is probably even more important to make sure that it's length right, so it's going to hold together when it's hanging there. It needs to last through the smoking process. And then somebody else asked here, for your smoked sausages, what kind of wood do you use?
I think a lot of times wood is overrated, where not that you want to use buffalo chips, but a lot of it's for marketing. They say apple wood or cherry wood and so on and so forth. But we like to use our wood primarily for the color. And then, so we use a combination of wood chips of hickory and maple and beech. But I guess anything outside of like something softwood where it gets tarry, like a pine, any good hardwood would make a good smoke.
You want something that's not going to burn too fast. So that's where the softer woods come in. You want to just kind of smolder, and so it's giving you the color and the flavor from the smoke. And unfortunately, we didn't get too much into the smoking in this class, but that's
another class.
Right. But so basically, you need humidity and to take on the color and the flavor. If something's totally dry in there, it won't even soak up the smoke.
And
So
there's a few more food safety issues when you smoke too, because it's smoked at a cooler, more of a temperature where it's more a bacteria issue, but can't have bacteria.
but the thing is that you could start by using some of these recipes here and then putting in your smoker, and we can certainly work with you on that, you know, through different things to do with smoking. But
It's really a delight to experience your past, you guys.
That'd be great. Thank you. And you know, like I said, we'd rather do this in person, but I guess it's worked out fine. And
You guys, and I think we all learned a lot, and hopefully we'll have you at Farm Table at some point to do this in person with us.
yeah, we'll come down and have a snack one of these days here. We'll let you know when we're coming in.
All right, thank you.
thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.